You step outside on a hot day, walk 6 minutes, and suddenly your shirt has developed a large, unauthorized map of a country that does not exist. Why do humans cool themselves by sweating all over the place? The short answer is that your body is a warm engine covered in millions of tiny sprinklers. The sprinklers wet the skin, the water evaporates, and that evaporation carries heat away. It is an extremely effective system, provided you have water, exposed skin, and air that is not already doing a convincing impression of soup. Your body constantly produces heat. Even sitting still requires chemical reactions, working organs, and muscles quietly holding you upright. Start walking, running, or carrying groceries upstairs, and your muscles produce much more heat. Only part of the energy they use becomes useful movement. A great deal ends up as warmth. This creates a basic engineering problem. The human engine has to stay within a fairly narrow temperature range, but it cannot simply be switched off whenever the afternoon becomes inconvenient. At comfortable temperatures, heat can leave your body in several ways. It can radiate outward. Moving air can carry it away. Contact with something cooler can absorb it. Blood vessels near the skin can also widen, bringing warm blood from deeper tissues toward the surface. But these methods depend on the environment being cooler than your skin. If the air becomes as hot as your skin, or hotter, the usual flow of heat slows or even reverses. The atmosphere is no longer accepting your unwanted warmth. It is attempting to donate some of its own. This is where sweat becomes essential. Most of the sweat used for cooling comes from eccrine glands. These are tiny coiled structures in the skin, connected to the surface by narrow ducts. Humans have millions of them spread across nearly the entire body, although some regions sweat more heavily than others. Temperature sensors in the skin and deeper inside the body send information to the brain. When the body needs to lose more heat, the nervous system increases blood flow to the skin and tells eccrine glands to secrete fluid. That fluid begins with water and dissolved salts. As it travels through the duct, the gland reabsorbs some of the salts before releasing the remaining sweat onto the surface. Then the important part happens. Liquid water contains molecules moving at different speeds. Some energetic molecules escape from the surface and become water vapor. Changing liquid into vapor requires energy, and much of that energy comes from heat in your skin. The skin cools. Warm blood arriving there loses heat, and that cooler blood circulates back inward. So sweat does not cool you merely by being wet. It cools you by disappearing. If sweat rolls off your elbow and lands on the floor, it has removed some warm liquid, but it has missed its main assignment. A bead that evaporates from the skin is useful coolant. A bead that drops into your shoe is mostly an administrative failure. This explains why dry heat can sometimes feel more manageable than a lower temperature with high humidity. Dry air can accept more water vapor, so sweat evaporates readily. Humid air is already crowded with water molecules. Evaporation slows, sweat accumulates, and you remain hot while also becoming impressively damp. If you enjoy bad drawings carrying surprisingly respectable explanations, subscribe and we'll continue this damp little investigation. Sweating works especially well for humans because we have an unusual combination of features. The first is our enormous supply of eccrine glands. Other primates can sweat, but humans have a far greater density of these glands and can produce much more watery sweat across the body. The second feature is reduced body hair. Humans are not literally hairless. We have hair follicles across much of the skin, but most body hair is short and fine compared with the thick fur of many mammals. Fur is excellent insulation. It traps air, protects the skin, and helps an animal retain heat. This is useful on a cold night. It is less useful when you are trying to operate a wet radiator. A thick coat interferes with airflow near the skin and can trap humid air. Sweat may soak the fur instead of spreading thinly across the surface and evaporating efficiently. By reducing the heavy coat, the human body exposed more of its sweaty skin directly to moving air. Our remaining scalp hair may represent a useful compromise. Hair on top of the head can reduce heat gained from direct sunlight, even though it also reduces evaporation from the scalp. The body radiator is mostly uncovered, while the roof retains some insulation against the large nuclear furnace overhead. Upright posture also helped the overall cooling arrangement. Compared with a horizontal animal under a high sun, an upright body can present less surface directly to overhead radiation. More of the body is also raised away from the hot ground and exposed to airflow. That does not mean humans stood up purely to avoid being warm. Bipedalism appeared long before the full human sweating system, and it had many possible advantages. But once our ancestors were walking upright, reduced body hair and widespread sweating could work together particularly well. Instead of being a furry engine cooling mainly through one small opening, humans became tall, thinly haired radiators that could release water across a broad surface. Compare that with a dog. Dogs have sweat glands in places such as their paw pads, but they cool themselves mainly by panting. Fast, shallow breathing moves air over moist surfaces in the mouth and respiratory passages. Water evaporates there and carries away heat. Panting is a perfectly respectable system. It simply concentrates much of the evaporative equipment around the head. Humans distribute it over the torso, arms, legs, and forehead, giving us a large cooling surface while we move. Horses are an important exception to the simple comparison. They can sweat heavily across the body and are excellent athletes. Their cooling system uses a different type of sweat gland, working through a hairy coat. Many other mammals rely more on panting, seeking shade, wallowing in water or mud, tolerating temporary increases in body temperature, or reducing activity during the hottest hours. That final strategy is extremely sensible. When the landscape becomes dangerously hot, lie down under a tree and reconsider the afternoon. Humans can do that too, but our cooling system also gave our ancestors another option. They could remain active in heat for longer periods, provided they could replace the water they lost. This would have been useful for ordinary long-distance travel and foraging. Humans are not spectacular sprinters. Presented with a cheetah, our main athletic technique is to already be somewhere else. But human anatomy is well suited to sustained walking and running, and sweating helps prevent the heat produced by that activity from accumulating too quickly. Some researchers have proposed that this capacity supported scavenging and persistence hunting. In a persistence hunt, people track and repeatedly pursue an animal, often in hot conditions. Many prey animals can run much faster, but they may need to slow down, rest, pant, or find shade to release the heat produced during running. A human hunter can continue moving while cooling through sweat across the skin. There is evidence that persistence hunting has been practiced by some human groups, and heat loss ability probably mattered to the evolution of long-distance movement. But the precise importance of hunting in shaping the human cooling system remains debated. Sweat glands and body hair do not fossilize nicely. Archaeologists have yet to uncover a 2-million-year-old armpit stain with a helpful label. The safest conclusion is broader. Efficient sweating allowed humans to travel, forage, and sometimes hunt during conditions that forced many other animals to reduce their activity. It expanded the hours in which the human engine could keep running. This ability came with a major trade-off. Sweat spends water. Panting also loses water, but human sweating can drain large amounts from the body during prolonged heat and exercise. Sweat also carries sodium and chloride. The glands recover some salt in their ducts, and heat acclimation can improve the body's cooling response and salt conservation. But the system is never free. Without drinking water, the radiator eventually begins emptying its own tank. Blood volume falls, the heart has to work harder, and sweating can become harder to sustain. A cooling system that depends on water is powerful right up until the water is gone, which is a rather important footnote. Sweat is also not a meaningful replacement for the liver and kidneys. It contains small amounts of metabolic products and other substances, but its main job is temperature control, not a dramatic cleansing ceremony. Most waste processing remains with the organs that were hired for it, and visible sweating does not always reveal how well someone is cooling. One person may produce more sweat than can evaporate. Another may sweat less, but evaporate nearly all of it. Airflow, clothing, humidity, body size, acclimation, activity, and individual physiology all affect the result. The crucial measurement is not how wet you become. It is how much heat leaves with the evaporating water. Which brings us back to the mysterious shape spreading across your shirt. It looks like your body has failed to cope with the weather. In reality, it is evidence of a very specific human talent. Beneath the fabric, millions of glands are turning your skin into a self-wetting radiator, using water to export the heat created by an active body. Humans did not become the fastest mammals. We became the mammals willing to carry a leaky cooling system everywhere, then walk for hours while quietly hoping there would be a river later.